Hi everyone, I'm Mel and welcome to another episode of ThriverTV, and today's episode is, does narcissistic abuse permanently diminish us? And this is an argument that a lot of people say and they do believe, and from a human level we can understand that if we're just looking at things from a surface level, that it can absolutely seem like that it was a senseless, really cruel act of life and God or fate that we were born into a family of abusers, or that we ended up with a partner that abused us. And you know, a lot of people that were abused as children, they can even have the argument, well, we had no choice. We had absolutely no conscious choice in this whatsoever. But I really want you to understand that even people that were abused significantly later on in life through partners, they were powerless children regressing back to unconscious states, and they, in their own way, were just as powerless. They also too came from unconscious parenting. They didn't generally have model parenting. They had very painful childhoods as well. So is this just something that we have no choice in and it's going to diminish us? And then we can look at people such as the recently departed Wayne Dyer, who was such an icon. And one of Wayne Dyer's strongest messages was that his father, that was such an unconscious abuser in his life from the get-go, and in fact it was so horrendous that Wayne ended up in orphanages and all sorts of things in his younger years. It was quite an incredible journey. And Wayne states that his father was his most powerful, incredible teacher in his life. And there are countless people we know through history that have had the most horrendous abusive situations. There are people that I know, thousands of people that I know. There are people like myself that as a result of abuse, we've been able to make something much better out of our life. And when we look at Wayne Dyer's life, we can understand, and people like him, we can understand that it was actually as a result of what he went through that he was able to liberate himself first. That was the necessity, but he was able to liberate countless people all over the world as a result of his own necessity to liberate himself. So we could say, we can think, well, does abuse have a purpose? Now, if you really do believe that the family that you're birthed into is just random, and if you believe that you're not a soul in a physical body having an evolutionary experience, and if you don't believe that life and your soul are co-creating with you in order to evolve from beyond fear and pain and restriction and judgment into authenticity, love and truth and expansion, well then you would easily buy into abuse diminishes you. And that's what we can choose. But when we have a Thriver orientation, we look at a much bigger, Tiggy's back, Tiggy TV, a much bigger, wider experience, whereas we understand that we are a soul in a physical experience doing an evolutionary purpose. We are transcending and evolving ourselves beyond fear, pain, constriction and judgment, which is survival, into love and authenticity and expansion and freedom, which is creation. And we're not just doing evolution for our own personal experience, we're also assisting the evolution of consciousness on this planet. And that's what we understand. So what better way to do that than to be flung deep into an experience of understanding the dire pain of separation from ourselves, of not being self-partnered and not being partnered as oneness with life and others, and experiencing life through the lens and the holographic experience of a false self. What better way to understand how to evolve ourselves back to a true self function, to get out of that agony and out of that pain, and then become passionate, about helping others achieve that as well for their own evolution. What better experience to do that through than abuse? And the thing is, what really happens to us is when we're unconscious, because we're not taught this stuff, we really don't understand that. We think that everything that's happening to us is really quite senseless and it's not good. And narcissists have come into our lives for an up-leveling experience, and what that really means is that they are showing up for us the unconscious parts of ourselves in order to make them conscious so that we can heal them. Because that's what narcissists do. They go for your greatest gaps. They sense and know and investigate and find out what your flaws are, where you're going to hand over power, where you're going to get hooked in, where you're going to digress into fear and pain and show up as a powerless child, emotionally handing over narcissistic supply. That's what all of this is about. Now, when we remain unconscious, what we're really saying is, I'm not the generative source of my own experience, and we don't accept any of that. We don't take on an evolutionary process. And one of the hugest issues with that has been, as humankind, we've been taught it's not okay to be flawed. So what's happened is that because of all of these beliefs that if I'm flawed, I'm going to be abandoned, rejected, I'll be thrown out of the tribe. I won't be loved and I won't be safe and I won't be able to survive. All of that Darwinian survival of the fittest, that's what was drummed into us, and we carry it at a deep DNA level. So we've hidden our flaws, we've hidden them from others, we've put on masks, we've put on false selves, and deeply we've hidden our flaws from ourselves, which means that we're not self-partnered and we're not evolving ourselves. And then what happens is our hidden flaws inside of ourselves have become unconscious. The disowned parts we've divorced ourselves from. So rather than being able to heal them, there are unhealed wounds in the background now running amok, screaming, trying to get our attention so we can come to them. And that's what internal pain is. Emotional pain. It's also what manifested physical pain is. And tragically, what it also is a projection out into the field. So our disowned parts, our shadows, if they're not getting our attention through emotional or physical means, then what they will do is unconsciously be out into the field, projected onto somebody else, so that that person or situation needs to come to us, which is the identical wound, to hit it hard, for it to come up in our experience, to make the unconscious conscious. That's what the whole up-leveling experience of narcissists is. Now, if we remain unconscious, which we did until we became conscious, if we remain unconscious, then we only have one way we can go with that. It's quite simple. We have to blame that person. And then what we're not realizing is we're missing the whole point. Life and our soul working in concert with each other have got to up the ante, turn up the volume and make it worse to get our attention. And what we're not realizing is that our soul is ourselves unconsciously. Our soul, our highest evolutionary part of ourselves, is trying to smash our unconsciousness open in order to bring in the process of consciousness, self-partnering and evolving ourselves. And it looks like it's everybody else out there going on, but it's not. And the other thing about all of this is, the other reason we miss it, we miss the whole evolutionary process, which means that we are going to be diminished, is that our flaws, our gaps have been our normal. Usually we're born with them, and I'm going to explain this to you. And then what that means is we don't know, we're unconscious. We really, we might know that there are problem areas in our life, but it's our normal. We've always survived with it. We've always worked with it. And it's not until it hits a crisis point that we're actually ready to do the evolutionary work on it. So an example of this was my agoraphobia. Now, before narcissistic abuse, I used to think people were making agoraphobia up. I never got it. And I ended up, through narcissistic abuse, so agoraphobic that I couldn't go outside of a safe zone without having a significant meltdown or a panic attack. And nothing, I had tried everything to heal it and I hadn't healed it. I was barely managing it. And it could be really argued that he did that to me because of the stalking and the threats and the extreme abuse and, you know, all these things. It could be really argued that it was him. However, when I healed agoraphobia with quantum freedom healing and I went into my body and I tracked all of that terror of being in life, all of that terror, and tracked it back, I found DNA causation, wounding and past life experiences that had set up completely in my inner identity. It is not safe to be in life. That's what was going on. So what had happened was he was simply hitting that wound, which was really the shadow projecting out into life that needed to bring somebody that would bring that wound to life for me, which was him. He was a perfect match for that because he was crazy. Okay, and all of that came up through the experience of narcissistic abuse being that bad that life couldn't carry on as normal anymore. I'd been able to exist and survive, but what happened is when I found all that causation wounding and I released it out of my body, what I deeply realized, the awarenesses that came, was that as a child I used to hide behind my mother's skirts. I was always timid. I was always scared about being in public. I never wanted to be out in the open. I never wanted to make far-reaching decisions myself. I wanted to be behind the scenes. And in a lot of my life, the only way I had been out there was alcohol. That was the only way I could not be fearful, was to be drunk. So, you know, everything just made perfect sense for me. So the truth was, I'd always been agoraphobic. It was just at a lower level, and it was enough of my normal that that's just how I'd always existed. So that's just one example of the up-leveling and the truth of our soul evolution, which means that so much further away from being diminished by the experience, what we're actually going to be is liberated through these experiences beyond where we ever were, even before abuse happened to us, even if abuse is all you've ever known as a child. No, so my personal experience now of radiance and expansion is beyond my wildest dreams compared to who I was able to be in the field of life as my old self, still carrying those DNA conditions. So let's go back to the original question. Are we going to be diminished, permanently diminished by a narcissistic abuse experience? And the answer to that is, if you remain unconscious, yes. If you don't see the bigger, wider truth, yes. If you're not prepared to take this to a quantum revolutionary reason, yes. If you're not prepared to come into your body and self-partner and liberate yourself beyond who you were being in order to evolve into who you can be, yes. But it doesn't have to be like that. And that's what the Thriver orientation stands for. That's the work that I do, that I stand for. So I hope that this has really helped and made you, really given you some food for thought on this, because it changes everything. It's so important. You know, this is a make or break experience, narcissistic abuse. It's either going to make you beyond anything you've ever been before, or it's going to break you because your unconscious wounds are now so conscious and you're not going to them. You're staying unconscious, you're in blame. You're just trying to self-avoid even more, you know, through medication or addictions, or going back to the narcissist, or finding another narcissist, or whatever it is that is representing avoiding yourself. So stop it. Stop it. It's a better way. There's such a better way. So if you enjoy my videos, I would love you to subscribe to my channel and like and comment. And also too, if you haven't as yet, please sign up to my New Life newsletter, my free resources, where you can really get on track to healing from narcissistic abuse. And you can do that by clicking the link that comes up on this video. And I'd love you to join in my next 3 keys to thriving after narcissistic abuse 3-hour teleclass, where you can learn all about these deeper quantum truths. How do you get into your body and how to up level yourself in record time in more powerful ways than you ever thought were possible. And you can get involved in that by clicking the link that comes up, clicking the button that comes up on this video. So that's it from me, everybody, until the next video. So keep smiling and keep thriving, because there is nothing else to do. Okay, so till next time, lots of love. Bye-bye.